Hello and welcome back to for the very first time to the channel. Today I am here to look at whether I have reached my goals that I set at the beginning of the year. So I gave myself a TBR for January to March. Recently I did one from April to June, but I thought let's have a little look at what books I actually said I would read and put in the pile, because I do schedule my reads, but I'm a mood reader as well. I use kind of the schedule as something to hone in on to keep me on track, but then a lot of books I will mood read, as you'll see very shortly, because there's 24 books on that TBR. And so let's get into the ones that I've actually read, and then I'll talk about some stats and other books that I need to read that I mentioned then that I still need to get to. So, as I said, kicking off with what have I read that I said I would. And so to kick that off, I have read Unsouled by Will White. This is book 1 of the Cradle series. And I also read book 2 and 3, like I said I would. And I even went one further. I've read the 4th installment. But I guess I did that in April, so kind of cheating mentioning it in here. But so yeah, the first 3 installments are 3 that I said I would read in January to March. And I did. I've read 1 a month. And yeah, I feel proud that I actually kept that. It's one of the few things, as you'll see as we get further in this video. So I need to say it loudly when I actually do keep to it. And so yeah, I really enjoyed this. I think if it was one book on its own, I might think there wasn't enough depth, but because they're quite short, very fast paced, very easy to read, and very witty and quite tongue-in-cheek as well, I think when you read them kind of knowing that there's going to be another 8 or 9 installments, it's fine, because throughout now I've read 4 installments, there's a lot of character depth when you see them all together, but maybe not just in one on its own. But now when I'm looking back at how far the characters have come, it's a great journey. And so yeah, that was the first 3 installments of Cradle. And next up, I did read Imperium and Lustrum and the Cicero trilogy. I did this because there's a read along on the Library of Alexandria's channel, and he has a chat on each book if you want to go check that out. I did say I was going to read the entire trilogy, but then I was behind on reading Dictator, so I've not done that yet. And so Dictator is the 3rd installment of this historical fiction series, looking at the very famous figure of Cicero, who is a politician in the Roman Senate and played a key role in a lot of the events kind of predating what we know about Caesar. He plays a very avid role, and his conquest of Gaul may be mentioned, but it's a lot more by what I mean by predating it. Mostly what people know is when he was killed, and then all the warfare afterwards, and getting rid of the Republic as we know it. Well, not we know it, as they know it. And yes, forming a very different type of empire. So this is looking at kind of the context for what led to those events. It's very interesting, and I've really enjoyed it. And so yeah, I read book 1 and 2 like I said I would, but not quite book 3 yet. Yet is the key word. And so next up I have The Passenger by Cormac McCarthy. This is book 1 of the recent duology that he released. And it's not a duology, it is on its own, but then Stella Maris is an accompanying novel. And I said that I would read The Passenger and Stella Maris by January to March. I've only read The Passenger. And I did it pretty early, so yeah, I should have got to Stella Maris, but I will do pretty soon. There's some notes I still need to write down, as you can see, all these things that I put down there. And yeah, it was a fantastic book. I have done a review on The Challenger of The Passenger, and yeah, I thought it was very interesting. It's kind of got that classic McCarthy-ness, exploring manifest destiny, kind of forging our own purpose, or the lack of purpose in life. But there was a bit more heart than you might commonly associate with Cormac McCarthy's work, especially when you've read Blood Meridian, which has no sense of hope anywhere within the pages, in my opinion anyway. And so yeah, this was really enjoyable. I thought it does show that he has evolved as as a writer. And yeah, I think it'd be one of those where The Road I'd recommend to everyone. This is going to be quite divisive, I think, and it has been quite divisive, where I think you either love it or hate it, and hopefully you fall into the camp of the former. So yeah, that is The Passenger. And next up I have Along the Razor's Edge by Rob J. Hayes. And so this is self-published, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic, and I've also read book 2 and 3, and I didn't put them down on my TBR, but so yeah, they are 2 books that I've added because I enjoyed book 1 so much, and I've been listening to these. And Eska is a fantastic leading character. She is telling a chronicler's tale, so she's the narrator. She's telling the story of her past and how she has become such a legend, if famously or infamously, or perhaps both. A lot of both, I think. And so, yeah, it's really enjoyable, very witty, but quite dark as well. Dark, gritty, brutal. And it does look at the human condition. And I really like how we follow Eska throughout a long period of her life. So we do see kind of how people evolve and kind of that aspect of retrospection coming into play as well. So something that a lot of series don't have the luxury of looking at because it takes place in kind of an intense period of time. So yeah, this does something quite different, and yeah, it reaps the rewards. And yes, I really enjoyed Along the Razor's Edge and the sequels. Next up, I have Knight of Flames by Matthew Harvey. Book 2 of his A Time for Swords series. And so book 1 was kind of Magnificent Seven inspired, or Seven Samurai. And it is set with the Norse, the Vikings first presenting a threat on English shores with their raid on Lindisfarne. And that was not the first raid in England, but it is kind of recognised as kind of a turning point in history where the Norse made their threat known to the English shores. And so this takes place immediately after Lindisfarne. And yes, so it's about people trying to protect a village. And yeah, that's where the Magnificent Seven aspect comes into it. And I love how it's kind of got those kind of Western-inspired elements to it. A bit like what Wolf of Wessex, also by Matthew Harvey, seemed like. And I know, because I've watched quite a few videos by Matthew Harvey, that he is a huge Western fan. So yeah, no surprise that you find some of those inspirations here. But with Vikings, can it get much better? I think not. And so yeah, that is Knight of Flames, another really, really great book. And whereas A Time for Swords is located in England, A Knight of Flames we may explore a bit more, to say the least. But of course I won't say more because I don't want to give any spoilers away. And then another one I have is a release of 2023, The Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan. I have a review for this over on the Brothers Gwyn, of course, with my brother Ed. And yeah, it's a tome of a book, but it was fantastic. This is book 2 of the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. And yeah, as I said, released in 2023. I was kind of wary because The Justice of Kings I thought was great, but I knew that this was going to be journeying to a different location. And I was thinking, oh, is that going to get rid of the strengths that I really enjoyed about book 1? No, it did not. Richard Swan kept kind of that mystery element, looking at the link between law and justice, and where they're often not the same thing. But we journey to the capital, the centre of the world, as Sir Conrad von Valt knows it. And that has a fantastic new dynamic. And I'm very glad to see a lot of reviewers, booktubers coming to love this series. Recently, Abby Salter loved The Tyranny of Faith, and Matt's Fancy Reviews loved The Justice of King. So yeah, great to see a bit more love for it, and hopefully it catches on with a lot of the other booktubers. So yeah, there is The Tyranny of Faith, and yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait for book 3. Next up and last up, I have Legend by David Gemmell, another book that I have reviewed on the channel. And I believe this is the only one on the list that was a reread. And so it was a great reread. I really enjoyed this. I think my favourite works by David Gemmell are his Regante series, but Legend is the first book I've read by him. So it has a lot of nostalgia and sentimentality attached to it, as he's now one of my favourite authors. So going back to that first book where I discovered him, absolutely fantastic. I think there are little elements that you can tell it's a bit of an older book, but overall I think it still feels very fresh and engaging, and I love how it kind of takes those classic fantasy elements but then makes them feel a bit more modern with kind of complex grey characters. And Druss the Legend, he's called a legend for a reason. So there we go, they are the books that I read that I said I would between January and March, and there were 10 out of the 24. And so, yeah, I could do a bit better, and hopefully I do, because I have done a TBR for April to June, and hopefully I'll do a bit better there. Apologies if the ones I didn't read were books that you're looking forward to kind of hearing my opinion on, but hopefully I do get to them. That leads on to the next part of this video, which is where I'll talk about books that I still mean to read very, very soon. And so I will start with the Boudica Quartet. I read book 1 at the end of 2022, but then I'm going to be reading the rest of the series. So it's part of the Brothers Gwyn read-along that we have over on the Brothers Gwyn channel. And so yeah, please do join in. I'm currently reading book 2, Dreaming the Bull, and then of course it'd be book 3 and 4. I think I've actually got them the wrong way around. I think Dreaming the Hound is book 3. And so yeah, by the end of June I will 100% have read these. These are the ones that are absolutely certain. I was meaning to read these obviously in the first 3 months of 2023, hence why I'm talking about them in this video. But because we then decided to do a read along, because a lot of people expressed interest, I then delayed reading them. So that one, I have an excuse for, and it's probably the only one that I actually have an excuse for. But next up, I have Dictator. As I talked about earlier, the Cicero trilogy. This is the finale to that, the one that I didn't get to reading, but hopefully I do it early in the imminent future, and so hopefully near the end of April or early May. And so yeah, really looking forward to reading it. It was very interesting reading The Forgotten Legion by Ben Kane, which I finished last stream, then immediately started The Forgotten Legion, and without even meaning to, I didn't know, but The Forgotten Legion takes place literally as Lustrum ends. Two different writers, two very different stories, but it's kind of interesting seeing a different take on the history and kind of looking at that context. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading Dictator and following Cicero. A lot has happened to him, so I'm looking forward to seeing where he goes from here. And then next up I have Stella Maris, another one that I've already talked about because I read The Passenger. And so yeah, I do need to read Stella Maris. It's much shorter and it is a companion novel, and apparently it changes your perspective on The Passenger quite a bit. So yeah, I am looking forward to that. And then I have The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. I really need to read this novella because I absolutely loved the film Living, which stars Bill Nighy. It has gone down in one of my favourite films of all time, and it was inspired by a film by Akira Kurosawa, and he was inspired by The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. So I need to go back to the source material. So I should have said the film was called Ikaru, that Akira Kurosawa directed, and that was inspired by this. And so yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading it. Jack Edwards recently on his channel said that he read The Death of Ivan Ilyich and that it was absolutely fantastic. And so yeah, I've got very high hopes and I'm really looking forward to diving in. And then next up I have Jade City by Fonda Lee, of course, book 1 of the Greenbone saga. And so I really do need to get to this. I've heard of such amazing things, and yeah, The Godfather is one of my favourite films of all time, but the films 1 and 2. There's not a third, is there? But Jade City, of course, it is known to be very unique and different, but it's known to be kind of inspired by The Godfather. And so it's got those elements that I probably will love about it. And so, yeah, it's not the same story, but inspired by. And that's what we love to see, don't we? We don't just want to see a story regurgitated again. We want to see kind of a slightly different version, but taking what we love. And so, yeah, hopefully I'll find that with Jade City. And then the last book I'll be talking about today is A Feast for Crows by George R. R. Martin, with the first 3 installments of A Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire last year, and this is the 4th one. And so yeah, really looking forward to getting to it. I've heard that this can be quite divisive. A lot of people on a reread prefer it, but they say that's because when they first read it, they're expecting it to kind of continue with the adrenaline action pumping, kind of where A Storm of Swords leaves off. But it's a bit slower. So I think as I've tempered my expectations with the pace, I think maybe I'll enjoy it more than most people do on a first read, because I have been warned, to say the least. And so there we go. They are the books that I mentioned in my January to March TBR that I still intend to get to very, very soon. The others that I've not mentioned, I still intend to read at some point, but I probably won't get to them over the next few months, because there's quite a few releases coming out and other things that have come into the fray. And so, yeah, there we go. That's how my kind of predictions went. So just under half right, which I guess is good for me. But there's some people I know, it astounds me their discipline, that they can read everything that they set out to do. So it's absolutely fantastic. I admire those people, but sadly I am not one of them. But at least my mood reading keeps me on my toes. But everyone, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you found it interesting kind of looking at this, hearing a bit about the books I did read, what I intend to read, and also how inaccurately I can predict my reading tastes. And so yeah, there we go. Thank you so much for watching, and stay safe.